So we'll move from the human kingdom into the plant kingdom and talk about there's some amazing results people are having with the agricultural application using, again, very similar plasma waters, just mainly the CO2 GANs actually. And so we're going to talk quickly about the objectives of the use of plasma in agriculture, the methods they use, the results they're having, and then a little bit on the cup of life, which is the feeding system, and on pets, because there's another whole new realm of using this to help animals. So it's not just, this isn't just about how to grow the biggest and bestest marrows and pumpkins. It's actually about the quality and the strength and vibrancy of the plants, and also in growing stuff in a way that actually positively benefits the environment, in the same way that exposure to these plasmatic energy fields to the human body helps regenerate our internal energetic environment and help it sustain itself in balance. This has the same effect at the scale of the landscape. So these plasmatic fields help the landscape find their keynote, their reference points with relation to various elements, and therefore to sustain themselves in a viable and healthy way. So we don't need the chemicals and all that have been traditional. And also we learn a bit more about how plants actually work and what nature is doing, how it's feeding, how it's growing, and what the dynamic forces behind it are, which overlaps a lot with Steiner and the biodynamic movements as well. So it's a very holistic journey. So again, learning about the field interactions which occur between all living things, and learning how these processes work in the plant environment helps us understand how they're working in us, again, like how we're feeding and so on, and teaches us about the totality again. It just opens up this whole, it's like the GAN, it's like making our experience into a GANs and then a plasma, so asking questions about how everything works. So yes, we have a little clip here. Now this is to introduce the idea that plants, we see them growing at in our time rate, which is slow. So we think they're kind of fairly unconscious, undeliberate. They don't have particular intention. They just grow. But if you speed it up with time lapse, then you can see actually they do have a whole life to themselves. This is taken from a study done in America.
And I've been writing about plants for a long time, and gardening for an even longer time. And when I learned about this new field called plant neurobiology, I was immediately intrigued, because plants don't have brains and they don't have neurons, so what could this possibly mean? So much of our difficulty in understanding plants traces to the fact that they exist in a completely other time dimension than we do. They seem still, they seem inactive, just because they're moving at a different scale than we are. And so time-lapse is a way to close the gap between the plant time scale and our own time scale. But as soon as you do that, you begin to see the plant for what it is, which is an agent of its own fate and able to sense its environment and move in a certain direction. And as soon as you look at plants in time-lapse, you gain a new respect for them and what they can do, and that they are much more active. This video of the single plant reaching for the pole is striking for a couple things. Watch the leaves as the thing goes on. The leaves look very kind of clenched and tight, and they too are working hard to help the plant reach its goal. But as soon as the hook of the tendril reaches the pole, watch how they change their behavior. Instead of looking so strained and strenuous, they look like they're relaxed. They look very happy all of a sudden. And the other thing to look at is the nature of the motion and how effortful and striving it is. Basically, the bean plant grows a couple centimeters and throws itself over and over again with very good aim. It reminded me of someone with a fly rod casting repeatedly to hit a spot on a river. In the second video, we see two plants, bean plants, and they're competing for the same pole. And one of them gets the edge and is growing a little bit more quickly. And as soon as it makes contact, the other one seems to lose heart and suddenly stops aiming at the pole, which has been taken in some sense, and starts reaching in other directions behind the pole. You have to look carefully to see this, but it's reaching back in space and does that repeatedly, but there's nothing there. It's very sad, and there's nothing there for it to hold on to. And eventually, it just gives up in defeat. But somehow this plant is aware of its environment and is working really hard, striving to get to that pole. Now, words like striving and looking and knowing and noticing all are metaphorical in the case of plants, and we should be skeptical of this, of mood and attitude in plants. But it sure looks that way when you look at these videos.
Yeah. So it's nice, isn't it? That's my runner beans don't give up if they're going for the same pole. They carry on regardless, and you get far too many of them. But this one was nice. Yeah, I wouldn't be skeptical, like you said at the end, about the fact that they have intent and purpose and emotion and soul and the whole mission in life, really. And I think what's interesting about this is that science doesn't recognize they have a tangible nervous system, electrical impulses going through nerve fibers. No, but they're existing, as we can see here, at a slightly different field strength. And this whole expression of intent and self and purpose is happening through the same sort of field interactions, just in a more subtle level. It doesn't need the nervous systems. And through loads of studies like this, they found out that plants do operate like that, and they obviously do have a nervous system. It just doesn't need the kind of material fiber that we have in our bodies. And we know that plants are in a different realm anyway. They exist. It is said, by other teachers, they exist in the fourth dimension mostly in their existence. We're just seeing the matter state flesh. So and the mineral kingdom again is another octave up. So all these things have life, just at very different speeds to us, and therefore very different. It looks very different, but they're all doing stuff. I'm sure if you time-lapse the Grand Canyon, not just the weather bit, but the actual construction, the electric universe theory of stuff being made, you'd see the same stuff. It's just a lot slower. So,
My name is...
Sorry, the Secret Life. We're coming to that. Yep. So I would say plants are intelligent sentient beings. But we need to connect with them at a different level. And this plasma science actually doesn't necessarily go into the level of the elementals, the nature spirits, the devas who are looking after those kingdoms, although they would be energies and forces in their own right. But what's really interesting about this is just being able to substitute chemicals, which is the chemical methodology, for a different one. And as we said, so knowing this, as we'll come to, will help us understand the planet. And our journey of learning will also help us connect with the beings that share our planet. So that is the elementals and their devas. And the plasma science is the science of unraveling complicated natural processes and understanding them in simple terms. And this, the beauty of this plasmatic science is that it really is simple. It's just about operating with field strengths rather than needing the gross chemicals. Just understanding the makeup of plants compared to us and how we connect with them. We've been before through the ideas that the neutron, the proton, the electron are the fundamental constituents of an atom and also of this sort of primary condition of matter in all its levels. And we could associate the neutron with the soul in man, the proton with our emotional body, like the consciousness bridge between the soul and the matter state, which could be the electron and the physical body. So we've got the Trinity in us, these three different states. But compare those to the plants. We've got the soul with the iodine element, or pitch, as we said before. We've got the emotional body, man, connected to zinc, the physicality, copper, blood with iron. But then we take the plants, and the soul of the plant seems to be connected with a pitch of zinc. So we get a link across there, from the soul to the emotion. So man's emotion connects with the soul of the plant in field strength, in the terms of field strengths. So this can help us understand why, colloquially, we'll say that we feel suddenly rebalanced in nature, or we feel energized or uplifted. The happiness, the emotional component of our consciousness, is fed by the soul component of the natural world. And go back to the elements. So our physicality well, their emotion is sulfur, so the sulfates and stuff which are given chemically to plants, but if we can find the field strength version, that can feed their emotion. And physicality for us is copper. For the plant kingdom, it's silicon, silica base to the mineral kingdom in this planet as well, whereas our base is carbon as human beings. And then blood iron, but the blood of a plant is magnesium, or the chlorophyll is related to the magnesium field strength plasmatically. So here, the Secret Life of Plants and The Secrets of the Soil, I think, are both fantastic books. I was scandalized that Secret Life of Plants was written in 1974 or something, and I wasn't told about it until 2015. But there we are, things come when they need. And then The Secrets of the Soil came soon after that. That was written in 1997, and itself is a staggering piece of work, I think. And these guys working out how agriculture should be done. A lot of the Americans were amazing at pioneering this stuff, and also the Steiner and the biodynamic movement. And they were all recognizing these etheric formative forces that are behind the systems in nature. And we're dealing with them here, maybe at slightly higher octaves as well, because we've reduced what we would call Steiner's biodynamic preparations, or sort of 6 or 7 standard ones, down to maybe 2 of these plasmatic field strengths, which seem to help plants in the same way. And even if we find there are more recipes coming out of this in terms of ganses for plants, they're a heck of a lot easier to make than these Steiner biodynamic preparations, which are incredibly arcane and very time-consuming, which is part of the beauty of the alchemy of them, and that teaches man a heck of a lot as well, by bothering to take the time to connect and be focused and conscious of what they're doing. But this gets us there a little bit quicker as well. And the same things apply, making your nanocoating, making the GANs, the longer they take, the more natural and slow the process, the better quality, higher frequency they are too. So there is an element of that requirement still there. So the legacy so far is all about chemical processes, of course. The modus operandi for the last 50 years since the big companies came along after the war was you need chemicals, and it was a great breakthrough, and like, oh my God, we found out NPK is what plants are made of if you burn them. But what they're not recognizing is that the NPK is just the physical matter state. What the plant is using is the field strength of NPK. And that's what the biodynamic people are remaking through their processes. They're expanding these chemicals back into their GAN state so the plants can use them directly. So we're hurting our plants. We're forcing them. Yes, they'll eat food from chemicals like our digestion does, but it's strenuous and it burns the land. Because these chemicals in their raw form are acidic, and they destroy the microclimate, the microbiome of the soil. And the soil is where the alchemy of this plasmatic science takes place. So it's the microorganisms in the soil, which I'm probably getting way ahead of the slides, but it's fine. The microorganisms in the soil are what are doing this sort of GANs-making process for us. They're breaking down these raw matter state chemicals from the mineral kingdom and elevating them into a plasmatic field strength, which is beautiful. And the scientists after the war, around there, just completely don't see it because it's invisible. And it was even the guy 100 years ago who recognized bacteria. We can't see bacteria, but we have at least accepted that. So we need to accept the next step of what the value of bacteria and worms and bugs and all these things in the soil can do for us. So that's part of the beauty of not having to use chemicals, is that we can then recognize and allow these microorganisms to do their job, but we can also do their job for them in a way. We can give extra power and impetus to the plants through the plasmas. And then also how plants grow and express themselves. We can see the same magnetic and gravitational effects. So plants have a magnetic and gravitational field, and that is imprinted in their DNA. Their template, their blueprint says what field strengths they have innately, and therefore whether they respond to their environment, their shape will manifest. So you get tubers in the ground, also the up and down. In the ground, they're more gravitational. They're seeking downwards. The roots, the aerial parts, the fruits, the flowers, which represent, again, the more spiritual aspects of nature and of man. The heart and the emotions and the spirit of the flowers are above the ground, and they're magnetical, they're radiating, they're emanating, they're sharing their beauty with the world and with mankind. But they need to draw sustenance also from the roots. And so their shapes, you get the different heights of plants, and you get a completely different variety in a forest, partly because nature always wants balance. It doesn't want just all tall trees, all magnetical. It needs some shrubs down at the ground. It needs to have a little balance and flow and a bit of diversity. And the same with the shape of the leaves and the fruits and the berries and all these things. This whole incredible variety of nature is expressing different types of field strength and intent from their blueprints. So they can, like us, maybe 20% of their sustenance could be from the roots, whereas the other 80% of energy is from the plasmatic environment of the air and the atmosphere around them, through the leaves physically and the branches. And you can imagine they're like little aerials. So invisibly, all these forms in matter state, the twigs, the leaves, these fine fractal shapes, are little aerials and antennae drawing these cosmic forces, as Steiner would say, the cosmic forces as well, into the plant, where they assimilate them and they will transmute them down into matter state, and what we see there is the flesh and blood. But they also keep many in the etheric state. A tree is much bigger than just its trunk. I'm sure if one had the eyes to see that as well, the whole dynamic living being in its aura. And with all the sylphs and nymphs, just the elementals related to those kingdoms. And it's these field strengths of the plants which are used in medicine. So we could, with this plasmatic hat on, we can understand exactly why are herbs working for us, because they're bringing the field strength of the same elements which are in our body into us, but in a form that we can then incubate, digest, and re-effect balance in ourselves. So it makes a lot of sense. Because plants are also made up of, we're coming to that, the potential for growing plants, enhancing their yields. So this is the advantages of using the plasma. Enhance the yields, we create a better environment around the plant, and the potential for that is immense. The GANS waters are used to change the field strength environment around the plant, and this provides the relevant energy for growth, stabilizing temperature, and controlling pests. So in terms of all those three, the energy for growth is giving them that magnetical life force and vitality in its subtle shape, in its GANS or plasma shape, so that plant gets fed without having to do all the digestion. Same for us humans. And so it grows stronger and bigger. And in terms of stabilizing temperatures, they found out, that this is particularly in Australia, where the summers come to get to 40 degrees centigrade, and the plants would normally, in normal farms, would start to wilt and really find that a struggle. But the farmers who are using the plasmatic waters to water the plants are finding that they are resistant to the temperature fluctuations and also to drought. They stay stronger longer. It doesn't make them immortal. Maybe there will be one that does help them survive any condition, but it's definitely improving their capacities. And controlling pests is really interesting, because for that you would use the CUO GANs, the copper GANs, which is the antimicrobial, antifungal, pesticidal one. And same for us, same for humans. And I've been doing it at home as well, spraying my plants which have got the scaly bug, white thing on, and aphids as well on another one. And it does make them go away, because in one sense it is just changing the environmental condition for the plant with the copper field, and that doesn't suit the bugs. They don't like that. That's not where they want to be. They want to find somewhere else that doesn't have the copper, we call it copper, the field strength of that. But the other indirect way that pests are controlled without using the copper is even that with the CO2 and the zinc, you're raising the frequency of the environment around the plant and within the plant systemically, so that they're at a frequency that doesn't resonate with the pests, because it's all about octaves. And same within the human. If we're incubating the parasites, the pests, bacteria, viruses, it's because our energy is at a certain level. So the plasmas, and coming around to the question about allopathic medicine, with the plasmas we're changing our internal environment emotionally and physically, so that these disease conditions, these blocks of energy aren't going to be present. So the same with the plants. You're raising the vibration, you're raising the bar, so there's not a match. The nasty stuff, saying, oh well, I'll go somewhere else now. It goes to the neighbours' fields. They're happy. They've got the chemicals. They've got weak plants. They're suffering. They're full of too much nitrogen in the matter state, and they can't resist disease. And then they're full of glyphosate and stuff to try and kill the pests. And it's just incredible. But it's all written about in Super Life of Plants and so on. It's scandalous, really. It's been allowed to happen. But there have been some amazing pioneers in that biodynamic and just organic farming movement who've recognized this truth and seen the beauty and simplicity of how nature does it. So how does it work in terms of science or biology, really? If you look at the elemental breakdown, plants are 45% oxygen, then mainly carbon and a bit of hydrogen, nitrogen, the rest of the trace elements, like in man. And man, by comparison, has more oxygen, a little less carbon, and so on. But it's still those amino acids. It's still the COHN. So the atomic mass strength of the typical carbon dioxide is 44, and the basic amino acid is 43. So this goes back to humans as well, that the atomic masses are very similar. So you get plasmatic field strength of carbon dioxide is incredibly close to our protein base, and so it directly feeds those elements in us. And it'll be the same in plants. Jonathan covered a bit of photosynthesis, each leaf being a mini reactor. It's drawing in the CO2 from the environment, and then that is used by the leaf. So that'll be in sort of GAN state in the leaf, and then the plant uses that to create its other things. So yes, Jonathan talked about that. There's a little video here, though, which is showing CO2. This is a tub of water. This is a zinc carbon dioxide GANS box, and it's showing that it's completely sealed. What we can see here, the carbon dioxide parts per million is the 400, 410, 4 going down, 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 down. And this is showing how the carbon dioxide in the container from the air is actually depleting to absolutely nothing, and it's ending up all in the vacuum, in the saline water, being fixed by the reactor of the nanoplates and the zinc. They're creating that carbon magnet. So it's pulling the carbon dioxide out of the air in the tank, and it's now gone down to 0. So the tank's completely sealed, so no extra air can be drawn in. So yeah, so that kind of shows that is what's happening. It's pretty magic. We go on. So if we're talking about field strengths, we've got, this also works with weeds. So this is going back to the organic GANs. If you break down the matter state into nanomaterial and then make it into the plasma fields, you can do this with weeds. Weeds are actually amazing things, totally undervalued by us, but they're nature's way of actually restoring balance. You make an arid piece of ground, make a bit of barren ground, leave it to nature, and you'll find that very soon it will start to repopulate itself, not just with one plant, unless it particularly needs dandelion or whatever to fix calcium, potassium back into the ground, or whatever. But usually just a variety of plants, which are generically weeds, but generically the plants that come to give that diversity of field strength back to that bit of land. And so they're, for example, dandelion is rich in calcium, phosphor, iron, sodium, potassium, nettles in calcium, magnesium, iron. So naturopaths or organic farmers, if they're well tuned with the environment, can tell actually what the environment is deficient in by the type of weed or plant that is growing in that land. So if they see lots of nettles, and the nettles are there to rebalance an excess of iron, for example. And you can use that medically, so similar stuff. So for GANs and stuff, if you actually compost all your weeds, then you're breaking them back down into those constituent elements, which are all the same pizza, remember? They're all the same pizza, just a slightly different flavor, because they've got slightly different atomic mass, so it's bigger or smaller pizza. You break them all down, and then you can recycle them into your, either as compost into the land is great, but if you can make some GANs of them too, then you potentize that even more. And I think it was amazing also, forest fires is nature's way again of reducing the elements in a forest to ashes. What are we doing with ashes? We're reducing a matter state material back into its just into a nanoparticulate state, so just it's a nanomaterial, an ash. And then the rain comes, like our bucket of GANs, the rain comes, it mixes with the ashes, and then the acid, which makes them alkaline, which is the caustic in the process, or the salt. And then these combine with the natural salts in the ground, which is the salt in our GANs tub again. So the salts and the water convert the nanomaterial ashes into GANSes. So they plasmify nature's elements straight away. And it's happening all the time, all around us. But they're just invisible field strengths to us. They've been released from their matter state. And nature says, great, that's what we'll use, and nature uses that.
Oliver, can I just
Yeah.
Lithia for a lot of years has seen this ground go from many different states, that from arable land that was converted back into grassland,
Yeah.
very much monoculture of grass, that then is left on its own for 10, 15 years, naturally reverts to chalk grassland. It goes through that weedy state, there's a proliferation of particular weeds that seem to nourish the ground through the tubers, and then slowly you actually get back to the indigenous nature of the ground and of the topography and the geology, and of course of the wider atmosphere. You can actually see that happen.
Right, yes.
You just need to give it time.
Yeah.
You need to stand back and not get involved with it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's brilliant because you see the archetype of the land is the chalk downlands. So it's rebalancing back to its archetype. So it's not making everything the same, even.
And
Yeah.
there's a diversity here on
Yeah.
this ground that is almost more diverse than anywhere on the planet. It's about 50 species per square meter.
Well.
There are very few places on the planet that have that level of diversity.
Yeah.
Just allowing it to be natural.
Yeah, exactly. So it's all got its little blueprint. And again, it seems to answer, if we go into geology, how and why copper forms in the earth in one part and coal in another and gold in another. It's to do with where the field strengths are all finding their natural balance, and they will, where the Coulomb barrier will have a certain value, that will be the value which relates to an element in the matter state, which happens to be copper, happens to be gold. So in Fukushima, they found that actually they were converting some of the decontaminated water into gold because there was heavy mercury contamination, and mercury is one atomic mass, it's one neutron proton different to gold. So it's all it takes is one bit of plasmatic hydrogen to switch the balance with the right message, and you get gold. So there was a photo of that, the gold sort of liquid scum on top of the decontaminated water. So it's amazing the potential of the magic there. So if we treat our compost water and plants with the CO2 water, we can actually help nature not take so long. Because as Ray said, if we let nature take its path, it's great, but it can take 10, 15 years to restore a habitat. But with the GANS waters and with the farming, we can actually accelerate and improve the output of crops, but in a sustainable way. So the CO2 GANS water is the connection, as before, with the protein structures. The C GANS is seawater, very good, because it's got all the elements that are natural in the earth, in living things. It's like the sea water is like the GANS state or the transition state of consciousness into matter as well. And water is the king plasma. It's amazing. It's well, we don't begin to understand the magic of water. What we're seeing there is just the matter state of that incredible entity. And CH3 water is giving the energy to the plants. Zinc oxide connects with their emotions, so it makes them happy. And the amino acids, like all of us, is connection to the physicality, and so you get happy daisies. No, those are sunny boys. So how we do it is liquid plasma rings is one thing. So these little rings you can use around your neck and wrists as well, but people are putting those around trees. So, I don't know, I've got pointers now. Yeah, it's here. Around trees, put it around the tree trunk, and if you put one low and one high with slightly different concentrations, like with the health patches, you get a flow of plasma fields, and the tree can absorb that. And you get huge amounts of the picture at the front was figs, which we can't go back to really, but massive great figs the size of avocados. And it wasn't they tasted worse because they they're not force fed in terms of how agriculture or force feeding goes with plants, force growing. They just they've got the enthusiasm back. They're given the vitality and ability to be bigger. Doesn't mean they're worse or plainer. And yeah, so there's a bracelet around a little bell there and there. And plasma balls, so you can suspend balls. This is a hydroponic bed, and several balls. They're like mini reactors, slightly different strengths of plasma, so you create a infinity loop between them because it wants to create the balance that we talked about between the mag and the grav, but the balls themselves cannot move, so it has to do itself by moving plasmatic fields, and then the plants can pick those up, the radiation. And also the just GANS is in a water bottle suspended in the water tank, and that will charge the water, again same as us in our water jugs or whatever, but on a bigger scale. And they only needed one bottle that big to do a 50,000 litre tank or something. Yeah, like somebody was saying, it's not really about quantity. For me, I'm still attached a bit to, I'm sure if I have more it's going to be quicker, but we need to learn it's not, a bit like homeopathy, in fact probably the less. And also, if you're getting really into agriculture, energizing tubes, so you wrap the pipes around the water pipe, and then as the water flows through, it gets magnetized. It picks up the plasmatic fields, carries it in its memory, and releases that in the environment. So yeah, this is a hydroponic system. I think the one we showed, 24,000 liters of water, separate bottles of each GANs, actual sea GANs in liquid state to the trough as well, various balls, spraying on the leaves, and also put a bit in their vermiculite when they started sprouting the lettuces. So this was, there are some rings there, this is hydroponic before, that's 25 days later. That doesn't mean anything apart from, I think the point was that was actually really quick for the hydroponic tent. They got the lettuces to that shape really quickly. I think the standard would be longer. I think that was the point being made there. There may have been 35 days, 40 days for the neighbours. But this is their roots. If you can see, plasma system, they've got bigger, healthier, whiter roots, whereas in the other untreated ones, they actually got root rot quite a lot. Yeah, which is this slide. That's actually size, this one. But so the previous one, they did get root rot quite quickly in normal hydroponic situations in Australia, where the water gets up to 40 degrees as well as the air, and that's not good. But the ones with plasma water are actually very resistant to that. And this is size, which size sometimes matters. In the plasma system, when you're trying to compare modalities, it does, there and there. But also not just about size, it tasted good as well. It was fine, a good lettuce. The midday sun, the wilting effect, that was tired, droopy lettuces. That was lettuces in plasma water, full of verve, very enthusiastic still. So this particular hydroponic farmer, the observations after a whole year now of working with the plasma waters. So when heat was intense, the lettuce never drooped. When the roots stayed white throughout the season, which was exceptional in their own words. All other hydroponic farmers had root rot from bacteria, etc. Theirs did not. Even the seedlings the commercial growers are buying had the same root rot. So these guys started with a bit of root rot, but it cured itself because it was given a healthy environment to grow in. They had a few isolated lettuces rot, but it didn't spread, which normally it would. And they feel that the GANs water played a huge role because they've been doing this for 10, 15 years. They know what it was like before introducing this type of energy. And their neighbours won't. It's funny how they're not interested. It's funny. But anyway. So this is another farm in Traitemont-de-Gans, France. So that was strawberry lines treated with GANs water, and that was ones that weren't. So you start to feel sorry for the ones you don't pay attention to, actually. So there's probably karma coming into using them. And squashes, this is clear, isn't it? Before and after. And this another guy is in Western Australia instead. So pumpkin plants, he put the little balls on the tomato plants, and the field radius he measured was around that. You measure it currently only really through dowsing. We don't know if many instruments that can pick this up reliably yet, but people are working on it. And he found that, I can't see it here, but he said that his pumpkins within that radius were actually, the leaves were greener and tougher, and the pumpkins were a bit more excited as well. So that they were picking up on this radiating field. Because it radiates, and it can expand 10, 20 meters if you give it enough juice. And plants, more tomatoes, grows least before, and again, maybe it's hard to see in the pictures, but this guy, you can see from his text, some plants were developing fruit in an unprecedented way. And in his past experience, he said they used to get wilt and red mite attack, but here they haven't had that problem because of their innate strength, and maybe because they could use some CO2 as well, just to discourage the pests. He's got his plasma balls hanging with the tomatoes. And he extended his season as well. I think we're going to see his summary coming up. More plasma balls hanging with his tomatoes. Rings around the base of the tomato, plasma tube with CO2 water probably in it. I don't worry about the text, it's easy. This is just his summary. He said that plasma fields placed in a system hanging around a plant or tree had an apparent beneficial effect on the production of the fruit. The plasmas mixed in with small graduated amounts of CH3 for energy and CuO produced that result. Plant growth was generally accelerated and healthy in his plasma fields. Plants appear to have enhanced immunity to disease and insect attack. So these are lots of people's different testimonials. It's just one farm, that's why we're repeating it. Plants coming to the end of their production cycle extended their fruitful period as well, which for farmers is obviously of interest. And spraying plasma combined with the systemic system, so feeding them the water as well, gave them their immunity, immune system a boost. They were immune to the weather extremes. And the fruit production was good. It was not excessively large, but a good size. And his results were most successful, and he will be eliminating the use of insecticides, and obviously doesn't need any fertilizers. So he thinks the world use of plasma tech will revolutionize future agriculture. Yeah. We hoped biodynamic would, but I can see how biodynamic doesn't, because it's quite a process. And 50 years ago, it was maybe more of a leap of belief and whatever to understand the invisible worlds. But people are, with the internet, people are finding out a lot more now, but what we haven't been told about the unseen worlds around us. And then they can start to explore for themselves. So a few little results. This is from home. This is my mung beans. So I soaked some in the CO2 water and some just in normal water. Again, photographs aren't quite good enough, but you can already see there are many more sprouted white dots in the ones in the CO2 water, but also they lasted a lot longer than the ones without in normal London tap water. So if you can potentize your water as well, that would have an effect. If you can do anything to help the water be more structured and coherent, then that will help the whatever organic matter is in it. These are my runner beans. On the left, he was on a completely different windowsill, same amount of light, and that was London tap water germinated. And this chap is twice the height in 2 weeks, and he was Gans water fed. So that was quite nice. And we'll see how they do in the troughs. But they did find in Australia, doing the soaking seeds in Gans water, that they germinated fairly much at the same rate, in fact. But what they found was that the root mass was massively more eventually in the CO2 water ones than in the normal ones. So the benefits became more apparent later, not necessarily at germination stage. So they got more robust plants through their life cycle. And the next one is shelf life. So these are the Australians again. They put their cress, which they sell in the local markets, in the fridge. That was grown with plasma water. That one wasn't, but the story, oh look, there's a little infinity loop there. And that is actually what happened. Of course, if you've got one that has been grown and raised in the plasma water and one that hasn't, you put the one that hasn't next to it, it's going to benefit because the fields extend. So they found that the one they hadn't grown in plasma water, which they thought would decay very quickly, didn't. But only, that didn't ruin their experiment because they realized it was actually just cross-radiated by the other one. So they did it separately because they know that this one would normally only last about 4 days in the fridge. These lasted, let's say, up to 90 days in the fridge with no chemicals, no formaldehyde, nothing artificial, just their vitality was so strong it didn't deplete. Yes?
So if you just put a bottle of Gans water in the fridge, could you then make everything have greater longevity?
In theory, I haven't noticed that at home. My organic beans, they do still go off after a week. So I think if it can be systemic in the plant, it gives them that innate vitality. But it should help potentize the fridge a bit. And certainly the water within the things in the fridge, yeah. But experiment, try, yeah. Sonny? Yes. You've had the patches around your bottle next to the fruit bowl. Yeah, and that stabilized the fruit. Oh, that's the next picture nearly. Coming something very similar to that. 2 pictures time. This one, this is how it's nice that kids can get enthused by this and just, they've got the innocence not to say, oh, that's rubbish, doesn't work. They'll just try it. And this kid in high school in America tried it. He got some CO2 water. He planted some seeds, sunflower seeds or something, in 2 jars apart. The plain water ones are here. Nothing happened very fast. And here they did actually germinate quicker in this situation. So he was dead excited. He was like, wow, that's nice. And
with normal, is that with
Oh, there's a good one too. I don't know about those, but Mr. Kesh has found that if you put the Monsanto GM seeds into CO2 water, it resets the DNA template to what it should be. Try it. I haven't seen that, but that sounds amazing. Because yeah. So everything just goes back to its blueprint. These are the elements in their pure state. So they're bringing everything back to their reference node in accordance with their template, which allows everything to still be diverse. Because otherwise I was just thinking about everything will just turn up into oxygen or hydrogen. That's not what happens. Because hydrogen is the root note of the universe, and everything is related to not the frequency, but the nature of hydrogen, or oneness. And it's all music. That's a whole other day, isn't it? And then architecture. So here, the plain water, this is the same kid. He thought, well, what happens if I get my tomato, my raspberries and blackberries and leave them to decay naturally? That's what happens. And he had a control. He had the sprayed ones with CO2 water, and they didn't decay. Well, they would eventually, but not at the same rate. So he was excited by that. Yes? Yes. Yes. Jonathan touched on Fukushima. So Fukushima is that's the big challenge, the radioactive decontamination, and they found that with these plasmatic fields, they can change the isotopes of the radioactive isotopes, decay them down into harmless states, and the physics of that is it's another day, and the physics of oil spills is fascinating as well, because oil is basically complex chains of carbon and hydrogen atoms, and they, in their fundamental state, are sugars. CH3 is a methyl group. It's the base of sugar, and so complex chains of sugars, which are fine for us. So actually, he's found that if you have the right Gans waters, plasmatic fields, you put them in the oil spill, it turns the oil into food for the plants, because it just breaks down to sugars. It's just a question of protons and neutrons. But we think uranium is so dangerous, but actually take 2 neutrons away and it becomes something very, very harmless. I don't know what I'm guessing there, but yeah, it's all about that. It's just taking a bit of the pizza dough out. Then you get back to something that suits you rather than something that doesn't. So, and in terms of insecticidal and other pollution, it's the same principle. Yeah, it's putting stuff back. Well, you could be engineering stuff to draw out certain protons and neutrons to reduce them to isotopes that do work. Oh yeah, and plants, it's amazing. In this book, they found out that they starved a field of potassium, for example, and, or no, was it calcium? They starved the field of, say, calcium, but the plants really need calcium. They can't not have it, but they only put potassium in the field. So what they found was that the plant still had a full abundance of calcium in accordance with what it needed, but none of the potassium, but no extra potassium, which was in the ground. And so they realized that the plants are actually transmuting the potassium down to calcium isotopes, which is what's happening in the body with the immune system, and using that plasmatic field, having broken it down. How the plant does that alchemic process, how it creates the GANs, converts the GANs to the plasma, I don't know. That's the magic of nature. But they saw that. That wasn't plasma, that was just nature doing that. So it kind of finds its own balance, which also answers again why our body, we don't have to eat the perfect amount of elements every day, because our body knows how to switch isotopes and break things down and decay things up into what we need, which is actually the next page. You got a question?
So therefore, if you had a plasma water in a plastic bottle,
yeah,
and you were drinking, it wouldn't leach out the petrochemicals and the bottle and the plastic. You have to keep it in the
no.
plasma.
Yeah, it can actually, the plasma waters, if they store in plastic, it's beneficial because they do use the carbon and hydrogen fields from the bonds in the plastic, especially if you're making the ganses, you're making them in plastic tubs. Yeah, that's the active process. In the tubs, it's good to be in plastic, but it doesn't decay the plastic per se, it's just using the magnetic field strengths of the plastics. But for the oils, yeah, it's the physical GANs waters that seem to, I haven't tried it myself, but it seems to be transmuting the elements in that state. But in terms of feeding, that's the next 2 slides, then it's tea time. And a dog, we're going to do a dog as well. So we've learned really the work of the universe is not chemical. that's just the grossest state. And actually the subchemical, the submatter octaves as well, which we are not aware of, which the densest elements, the uraniums, plutoniums, americaniums, whatever, probably go into those realms of existence. We're just in this matter, we're just in this field strength. That's what we see and touch. So, but it's not chemical, even here. It's just plasmatic fields and boundary conditions. And so, if we can use these nanomaterials, we've learned we can really help things go along, because we're not just this octave, we're lots of things. So the feeding system is based on that. We've kind of talked about most of it. 20% of our food. Our digestion, I think it's just amazing. Our digestion is this caustic process. We start with a strong acid in the stomach to break down the matter state into smaller parts, and the alkali transmutes that even further into nanoparticles in our stomach, which are releasing, therefore able to release their plasma field strengths more easily. And those are what our body uses. And the same with the gas going through our lungs. We're breathing in the carbon and oxygen. I think they've shown the oxygen molecules don't pass across the lung membrane. They can't. Otherwise, we'd probably be full of gas. It's the field strengths which are radiated across the membrane between the blood ganses and the membrane ganses in the lungs. So it's just a transfer of fields again. And the body's got these membranes all over the place, these field strength boundaries. It's amazing. And so that explains how we feed most of our energy from the environment anyway, like air plants, those sort of things, and breatharians. So breatharians have just actually really refined this process. They've gone through the stages of the matter state breakdown. Their field strength is able to draw in the elements directly from the plasma field, from the free plasma in the environment. I like cake, so I haven't gone that far yet, but it's quite tempting to try this, which is where you make a GANs of your banana. There's some at the back, banana, broccoli, whatever your favorite foods. You can charge your water with those plasmatic field strengths, drink that water, and you've got the information which your body would otherwise have to get in an arduous manner from your food. So it cuts out the middleman, which may not be fun, but it's interesting, isn't it? And that's a very pretty one somebody made. The 3 ganses around the side, the key ones, copper, iron, and carbon dioxide, zinc. You put your water inside. Oh yeah, and field transfer, this is a really cool one. You don't actually have to make ganses of your food, which actually takes a while. You can put the food on top, the lemon, the banana, and this water in this system will actually draw the information from the field of the food into the water and entrain it, and then you can drink the water, and you've done the same thing. So try it. I haven't tried yet. Yeah, you can put all your fish and chips. There was an American who did it with. He did nachos, burgers, chips, and sausage or something. They always go over the top, won't they? Even with nano food. And so yes, and there was a guy we know who lasted 3 months without food, but just by drinking the plasma waters. And then I think he got bored. He didn't die. He just got bored, I think. And that was Jackie. Yeah. Yes.
Would I need to know what chemotherapy to reverse the effects of chemotherapy, or would GANs water just do it?
We find that it has a consciousness and it sort of knows where to go. But I'd ask Jonathan afterwards because he's really more versed in that. Yeah, it's a bit like the body knows what it needs.
In terms of the land, how you could rejuvenate the land after chemical
Yeah. Yes, it's the same mirror, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah. I think it can be quite simple. The CO2, the main 3 or 4 seem to know what to do. And you can then get into so many different flavors and frequencies to get exactly the right match. But yeah, potentially. Have people tried doing Google? Oh, sitting it on Google Earth and doing some radionics. I don't know, they may have done, but of course that sounds perfectly feasible. Oh, on the planet? Yes, yes. And that's a whole other subject about butterflies and wings. Yeah, so people are putting the GANs waters into fountains and lakes and stuff all around the world to try and build up a little frequency. But similarly, people could be doing it with prayerful intent as well over lakes and it's all helping, isn't it? It's all good. So 2 more. then you can have tea. So with pets, you can also, does anyone know if any plasma waters can help relieve or cure pet allergy symptoms? And somebody said, yes, I put CO2 zinc oxide in my dog's drinking water. I also sprayed it on his skin where he itches and bites himself and noticed a dramatic reduction. He's also changed his diet to grain-free dog food. Thank good people, I'll try this with my friend's son. Oh, not dog. Any restriction on having small people drink the CO2 plasma water? Yeah, so son, not dog, but fine. Yes, same puppy. And there's another one here, last one. This was a stray dog picked up by Tom Salas, and he was found, well, he was just abandoned basically. And he basically fed him on CO2 liquid plasma water and washed his coat and the CUO as well for any pests and any bugs he'd picked up. And liquid plasma baths, lots of love, which would be a huge component of it. You know, that would do most of the job too. But he said that it was so quick, the complete rejuvenation of this creature using a combination of the love and the plasma waters. And there are so many stories like that from people in Italy who've been doing it with animals in rescue centres. So that's, if somebody's only interested in animals, there's a lifetime of work. You can just introduce rescue centres to some plasma waters, start washing the animals, and apparently there are amazing results. So it's a bit of something for everyone. And that means you can have some tea. Okay?